Welcome to the Monty interview. We're talking about Mexico today, one of the largest and fastest growing heat treat markets in the world. I am really pleased to have such great guests today. Nobody wants to hear me talk. You want to hear our guests. And our guests today are Mr. Carlos Torres. I apologize for the Spanish accent, which is very bad.
Hello, Gord.
Carlos is the president of the largest furnace builder in Mexico, Matza. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, president of one of the largest commercial heat treaters in the country, Creo. We also have Jim, or everybody calls him now, Jimmy Oakes, who is the president of controls company SSI in Cincinnati. He's also, and I was corrected on this, the current president of MTI. And of course, everybody knows MTI, Metal Treating Institute, largest group of commercial heat treaters in the world. Jimmy is also, boy, it's a long list here, Jimmy. Jimmy is also very involved with organizations such as ASM and NADCAP. So again, I'm really pleased to have Jimmy with us today also. Third person we have is a good personal friend, fellow that's been in the industry as long as I have, which is quite some time, Mr. Pete Callert. Pete is the president of Heat Tech Reps. He's based in Michigan. I put a question mark here because I wasn't sure how to describe what Pete does, but I have to say that he knows every single commercial and captive heat treater in the US Midwest. He knows everybody in this industry. And I guess, and Pete, you can.
Locked up.
Locked up, Gord froze.
Yeah, Gord's froze a little.
Yeah.
Correct me on this. I guess the best way to describe this in the US and Mexico. Again, correct me if I made a mistake in any of that background.
Oh, Gord, you flattered me. I'll take it all. So no mistakes.
I'm sorry?
I said, Gordon, you flattered me, but it sounds pretty accurate. Thank
Good.
you.
Our format today, basically, we've got three topics. The first topic, we're talking about heat treating in Mexico, which, as I mentioned, is an enormous market and a rapidly growing market. We're also going to move on from there to talking about heat treating outside of North America, specifically outside the US, and what needs to be done when you're getting products heat treated outside of North America to bring them into the US. Our third one is, and this is a hot topic these days, China. Do we need to worry about competing with China, whether it's on heat treating services, furnaces, controls, whatever? So we're going to start off with a question for Carlos, and this is a very broad question. Carlos, what can you tell us about heat treating in Mexico, both captive and commercial? Just a general background, the size of the market, perhaps. Again, an unfair question, but if you could start off just with a good idea about the market in Mexico, it would be appreciated.
Sure, Gord. How's it going, everybody? Glad to be here. So first of all, Mexico is pretty unique. It's pretty complex on the industrial area. Everybody thinks, when they talk about Mexico, everybody thinks about the touristic places like Cancun or Cabo or something. But Mexico is a very industrialized area, divided in four main areas, north and west, north, center, and south, right? The industry is mainly automotive, which I don't know if it's a good thing right now or it's a bad thing. And on the west, northwest, it's a lot of aerospace, but it's in the middle of the desert, right? Most of the stuff is captive, a lot of international investments, a lot of American investment, European investments, and we're starting to see a lot of Japanese investments. There's some Mexican big companies as well, but right now they're the fewer. And I get these questions a lot. How do we go to Mexico and sell? Well, it's a very complex question because Mexico is very big on industrial safety. You know, when I see a lot of guys coming trying to sell stuff or getting into places, they don't even have their safety boots or their safety hat. So they get very discouraged when they don't let them in. Plus, a lot of the decisions take a lot of time because of they have to have a lot of escalation levels for corporate guys. This is it, but it's mainly automotive, a lot of international investments on different areas, and it's growing, right? If you recall, the big boom was in 1994 when the first NAFTA was signed, right? Therefore, made a lot of sense for international companies to come here and have an install base. That's when we actually decide to open a commercial heat treat because there was a need to it. There were not enough commercial heat treaters, which now there are, but back then the level of expertise there wasn't there. So we created that, and as furnaces became more complex, more automated, more electronics, we decided to team up with companies such as SSI that are like the experts on this subject. And later, the growth was just exponential, and I believe we have great success with it.
By the way, Carlos, I don't know whether you remember this, but when we first met in Mexico many years ago, I asked you about the heat treating market there. And on the back of a napkin, you described to me the heat treating market in Mexico.
The NAFTA.
Basically your house was the center of the universe. And then you had this big area here with heat treating, big area there with heat treating, and then the whole rest of the world was just this little spot. I still remember.
And I do remember that I told you, if you ever get lost, use this napkin and go north.
Go north. You just keep walking. So
that's how Carlos explained the NAFTA agreement to me as well on a napkin. So it's his forte.
Jimmy, you're
Yes.
president of MTI. And recently, I guess it was just last year, 2020, you're promoted to president of SSI.
Yep.
Congratulations, Jim.
Thank you.
You've traveled the world, you've sold product around the world, you've been to China here and there. What, if anything, is different about doing business in Mexico? If you're selling product, if you're selling probes, controls, is there anything different about selling them in Mexico as opposed to Canada, the US, or China, let's say?
Well, honestly, I think that the relationship and the reputation that your company has is tremendous anywhere you go. And one of the things that we found in the Mexico market is, our goal was to establish ourselves down there as SSI, and that's why we created the SSI Mexico facilities, so we could have it didn't have to come back to the United States. We had some local presence there to create those relationships, quicker turnaround times, have supply down there from an inventory standpoint. That's what people are looking for. They're looking for that commonality from a cultural standpoint. That's why having an office there was so important. Not losing really the technical expertise that we think that we have out of our headquarters here in Cincinnati, distributing that down to the local level. And on top of that, having the quality systems in place. So what people are relying on, you just take something, like CQI9, Carlos pointed out that the automotive market is so big down there, but having the quality systems in place, so now they can get their equipment calibrated, sent back, turnaround time reasonable. And then when they have questions, about issues that they have a local group of experts that can handle it. So, but to go back to the original question, I think anything is creating a level of trust and having a relationship that a company can rely on when they need something. That is the foundation for building a good product and a good company in a location, and it worked in Mexico and it worked in other places as well.
By the way, your team in Mexico is excellent. And I mentioned just today, I don't know whether you saw it, I mentioned that Salvador it was just promoted to general manager. And I have got such a high opinion of Salvador. I mean, he dragged me all around Mexico last March, and he is incredibly hardworking. He's a really nice guy too. So you do have a good team there. So
actually, I think, Gord, last time I saw you was in Mexico. Now that you say
in
that.
person,
in person, yeah.
Oh man, I miss that. That was my last big trip anywhere.
Same.
To go to a hacienda in Mexico one more time.
Yeah. Well,
we would go anywhere.
So.
I'll take the hacienda.
Pete, I'd go to Detroit right now. So.
Oh, geez.
And Pete, next question for you. You promote commercial heat treats.
Yes.
Are you seeing any trends? Are you seeing that anything has changed since this pandemic started? Has it altered the behavior of captive and commercial heat treaters? That's the question.
Well, hi, Gord, Carlos, and Jim. Thanks for having me here. Gord, I think the pandemic is gonna, I think we briefly started this conversation earlier, change a lot of things. The immediate reflect was the downturn in business in, June, July, August. We saw a slight uptick in November and December. The conversation around the automotive, I know in the United States, things are changing extremely fast and are going to be accelerated now with this new president in place. So the energy costs in the United States are going to skyrocket in the next couple of months, even by 2022, the natural gas is predicted to be 50% higher than it is now. We all lived through the gas charge supplements that you had to put on people's bill when natural gas prices were so high. So I think over the last 4 years or 5 years, commercial heat treaters have enjoyed those low energy costs. I'm talking particularly here in the United States. So that's going to have to be tackled again. But we've been to that place. We've had the gas surcharges on customers. So the immediate changes, I'm not sure how soon they're going to be seen, but the long-term changes are going to be less cars in the world and less need to heat treat those cars or the parts on those cars. Not to say that that's going to shrink the whole heat treat department, because there's the industrial sector, the energy sector, going to backfill, where the automotive transmissions used to be per se, or the ring and pinions per se. So so the short-term effects of the pandemic have been felt by less work during the summertime. And I don't know if there's a prediction to go in the future. I think we all need a crystal ball to see how this is going to affect us in the long term. There is going to be some effects. What those are, I think you need to be a prophet to really tell them.
Well, you know what, Pete, you're talking about cars, automotive heat treating. You and I talked about this just before we started recording, and I mentioned I got a new vehicle back in March, and it's got exactly, I think, 9,000 miles on it
Right.
in 11 months. You got to wonder whether that's going to be, whether a lot of people are in the same boat or traveling less.
I have articles across my desk in preparing for this interview, and one of the things that talked about a lot in the Monty and other heat treat publications is globalization turning into regionalization, and that regionalization is going to affect the North American market, which is Canada, United States, and Mexico. I even think South America now is going to be a separate market from that America's market. One of the articles I can see right here was just, the Ford and Mahindra scrap a joint venture to co-develop vehicles, citing the pandemic. When it was signed, when Ford and Mahindra signed this agreement last year, it was touted as a great cost savings for Ford, because they were going to take some of Mahindra's cost saving ideas and institute it across their lines. Well, that deal is scrapped now. So just one article about it. And then I'm reading about energy costs and, using hydrogen potentially in the heat treat things. We're going to talk about carbon emissions, not only the energy costs. You're going to talk about carbon emissions and carbon footprints and paying for those. And Gord, maybe you can, institute a little input on that, those carbon payments that you have to make in Canada. And then the prophecy of everything, there's a Russian electric vehicle manufacturer called Arrival, and Arrival is touting micro plants at a time when Tesla is touting giga plants. So we have giga plants, we have micro plants, we have remote work is here to stay. So that affects the car vehicles that we were talking about, which is going to affect heat treating down the line. Talk about the fourth industrial revolution with all the automation and cloud storage and robotics, and that's the heat treat. Those are all the questions I think that need to be answered going forward in the heat treat market. again, the good things are, the bearing industrial bearing sector is projected to grow over the next 5 years from 18 billion to 26 billion pieces. So there's some growth in some areas. The energy sector is going to be growing. The alternative energy sector. So that's the state of the heat treat as I see it right now.
Let's we started off talking about heat treating in Mexico. We got a little bit sidetracked here, probably because we've got 4 people here that all love to talk about heat treating. So
yeah,
the next subject we're going to talk about is not so much Mexico, but just heat treating outside of Mexico, heat treating outside of North America. And the first question is going to be for Jim. Jim, the biggest issue that I hear quite often in North America is people, getting good people, finding a good, reliable person, especially with heat treating experience. It's a problem here. Yeah. So I guess my question for you would be, do you, with your offices outside of North America, do you have the same problems? Do you have the same problems getting a good engineer, a good experienced heat treat salesman? Is it the same outside of the U.S.?
Yeah. So thanks, Gord. It is. I mean, one of the things that we obviously 12 months ago have a different conversation about labor than we do today, but the problem still remains the same. And if you look at from our perspective, what we have to do is we have to look for somebody that you're going to have different hats. I mean, Pete talked about the Industry 4.0. Well, we kind of play a role into that because of the industrial automation side. So we have to have people that have that technical aptitude. But if you look at a furnace and if you look at all the moving parts, you kind of have to have a mechanical aptitude as well, and not afraid to get your hands dirty. So, and some of that's in-house stuff and some of that's on-site stuff. So you're really, it is a challenge. And to answer your question, you have the same problem everywhere, because what I talked about before is how do you create opportunities in markets outside of the U.S. Well, it's no different than here. You have to have technical expertise, the ability to help customers solve problems, which in turn is going to lead to opportunities for you currently and in the future. So if you can establish that in an office, Mexico, China, UK, wherever that is, or through partners throughout the world, then yeah, that's what you want. You want somebody to pick up the phone and make that phone call. Hey, I have this problem. Can you help me solve it? And maybe it's a product that helps it, maybe it's not, but if you have the technical aptitude. So it's really important. And what we try to do is use the foundation of our training here, whether it's using our quality systems that we have in place and kind of push those out, or just some of the training programs, or bringing those individuals to the United States. So we do that a lot of times. You've probably seen at some of the industry events where we bring people here, expose them not only to us, but to other companies, other technology that's provided to the industry, to let them learn. So once you do that, you're investing in people, right? So you also, you want to keep them around long time, invest in them. And that's showing that investment, that's making them part of the team, even though they're in some remote part of the world, in an office, or maybe they're working remotely. So those are the things that you have to do, I think, to continue to invest in employees everywhere. But it's a challenge to find them.
Yeah, so we're not unique in North America by finding good people, is what you're saying.
No.
I could just add one thing to that, like, the MTI, the ABMA, the ASM, all those organizations are involved in, scholarships and nurturing young students to take on careers and, metallurgy and engineering. I'm sure, Jim can reiterate that. It's one of his big focuses with MTI, ASM Heat Treating Society, American Bearing Manufacturers Association. Those are a big topic when you go to meetings, when we can have those again. How do we recruit these younger people into the business? We recruit them, then we train them to keep them in. How do we get them to come into this, fire and grease and stuffing cable in a hole when you're changing out a probe? And so I think again, that's been the story for the last 20, 25 years for all these professional organizations to, promote it from a school, from a
Yeah.
scholarship standpoints. So I think that's very important for our industry organizations to keep doing.
Right.
To keep doing.
And honestly, Mexico has a great program. I believe the technical
Through their ASM, Jim?
well,
Through Mexico's
yes,
ASM?
I think that in the world of academia, they're focused on some of the industrial side. Like here in the United States, people are thinking Google, Amazon. Carlos and I have talked about this, but there they really focus in their education around the industrial side.
I just have, go ahead.
Yeah, and
that's great. The university right in where Carlos lives is a wonderful technical university. Is it not, Carlos?
It is, and there's a lot of teamwork between the big companies and universities, and very focused to engineering, manufacturing, industrializations. Because when you have this level of industrialization, you must have well-prepared engineers.
Let me just I digress a little bit. That in the educational system in the United States was, at one time focused between high school and vocational schools, realizing that there was a difference between the two desires, and that, vocational school became less and less popular because work is hard, and going to an office job is easier, or whatever other social economic reasons, vocational schools became less popular. But when I recall living here in Detroit, I can just note a personal experience. After the 1967 riots, a group of prominent Detroit people got together and created vocational schooling. It was called Focus Hope. It was run by a gentleman by the name of Father Cunningham and another woman. And they were super successful for probably 25 years. They, machine shops, and they would identify troubled youth and put them in this Focus Hope program. And it was very successful. But over a period of time, Father Cunningham passed away. The other people that have really the energy behind it passed away, and it kind of faltered around. It's still out there now, but you'll hear, even the politics of today, that people now are talking about the need for vocational schools because of all these student loan debt, $1 trillion of student loan debt in the United States. $1 trillion of student loan debt in the United States. So there's more people now pushing for vocational schools. Like, hey, you can spend $25,000 in school and make $75,000 the first year you get out. So those are all the things that I think the educational system in the United States has been there. We have the resources available. Who takes advantage of them is the good question, I guess.
Hey Pete, it's the same in Canada. We need more plumbers than people with Bachelor of Arts.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
Carlos, another question. I've always been really curious about automation in our industry, and this has always been a bit of a puzzler to me because I go to Mexico, I see all these places, and supposedly Mexico is a low-cost labor area. I got to confess, I go into these big plants, I see more automation in a plant in Querétaro or Monterey than I do in Toronto or Cleveland. So I guess my question is that the norm in Mexico? I mean, why do you see so much automation when labor is relatively inexpensive?
Well, Gord, I believe automation is here to stay, no matter where you are in the world. If you want to be successful, you need to have some level of automation, no matter what. On heat treat, of course, we have the challenge that we have the big distortion issue on the fixturings, and automation like robots, they have a very millimetrical tolerances. So whenever a fixture is distorted, for the robot guys, it's a real challenge to do a repairable job. However, right, the level of automation has to be implemented there just because of the high volumes, right? And there's always something with people, right? No matter if it's low cost, I mean, they get sick, they go on vacations, and for this type of industry, we just have to keep treating stuff day and night, day and night. And of course, there has to be a level of automation in there. The balance here, the key on automating heat treat, it's the ROI, right? So when you have a good level of ROI, you can actually invest in something that is going to give you a great benefit, and you can actually decrease the level of labor that it's implemented in a heat treat cell. We have installed many heat treat fully automation lines with AFC Holcroft in the past 10 years. And always the struggle of the plant is to get guys to operate the equipment, guys to assemble the loads, to unload the loads. So you have to have a certain level of automation that actually pays for itself, right? So
Okay.
again, automation is here to stay, no matter you're in China, no matter you're in India. Actually, I just read an article that China, it's the country with the most consumption of robots, but like in a crazy scale, like 20-1 to the States, right? Even if it's a low-cost country, right? So automation, no matter what, will save a bunch of problems. The big challenge that we have, it's loading and unloading the stored trays.
The automation, I think, ties right back into the need for people. You know, when you can't find the qualified individual or the person who's willing to load that furnace, you have to come up with an alternative, and that would be a robot, right? So I think the whole automation thing ties in with the need for more people to come into the industry. Not that another person is going to prevent you from putting it in a robot, because it makes you more efficient. And it lets you.
When you say that, Peter, and you get more robots and more automated systems, the other thing that you need is going to have skilled people, skilled engineers that actually know how to service those things.
Absolutely.
Right? So
yes.
the skill level of the guys at the plant have to be very, very high on how to service, set up, and maintain this automation level, because automation can be very expensive, but it's high on maintenance.
Yeah. Again, predictive maintenance, like in the SSI software, you're going to have to apply to every piece of equipment you have in the plant.
You know what?
The IoT. That's the new buzzword, is it not? In the fourth industrial revolution, the Internet of Things.
Yeah, and if they add another I to that, they call it the industrial internet.
Yes, IIoT, the industrial Internet of Things. It's
You know
a
what,
very
gentlemen?
interesting, fast-paced world. Gord, these are little buzzwords I've been reading up on for today. So
Well,
it's the fourth industrial revolution. It's revolving around the animation, artificial intelligence, and they've deemed that IoT, Internet of Things. Small I, large, small, I don't know. It's a really weird logo. But State of the Industry 4.0. It's a good article.
You're a fountain of information today.
Just a fountain today.
Hey, Pete, I have a question. Getting back to getting more specific with heat treating. You're selling heat treating services. So you're talking to people that make things, and you're trying to sell them on the idea that you're going to do the heat treating for them. What is the main thing that they ask you? If you go in and you say, I want to do your bearings, I want to heat treat your bearings, what do they tell you? What do they say? What are the main requirements that they tell you as a salesman for heat treating services?
Well, obviously, you have to meet their metallurgical requirements. That would be the main thing. But in my personal instance, they're always looking for quality standards. And what are your quality standards? What are your report capabilities? Can I remotely look at my workloads? So the questions they ask are really, what are your quality standards? And from my personal perspective, over the last 20 years, it's been my quality standards come from NADCAP standards. So that's been a very good comforting feeling for a customer when they're looking for a heat treat, and knowing that a heat treater has the NADCAP capabilities and will follow those NADCAP standards. And you basically carry that through every load of work. If it's a NADCAP product or not, you're not going to change your quality systems per the product went into the furnace. So if I'm doing an aerospace gear or an industrial bearing, it's the same quality parameters. So that's very important. Gord, you really have touched on it many times in articles in the Monty too. You know, the main reason for, and I was just reading another article today, another customer, medical manufacturing device customer brought their heat treat in-house. It's never to save money, Gord. It's never to save money when you do heat treat in-house. That's the last consideration. It's the return time and potential quality control. So when they're coming to me, it's never really a price thing. I don't fight price. Sometimes I do if they're talking about you know, this is what our costs are internally. Whenever a customer tells me what their costs are internally, I know they're not fully burdened, and I know it's not a correct cost. So it's the cost is the last thing. So I would say quality, Gord, to answer your question. The most thing you have to appease a customer is represent quality heat treats, people that have a reputation in the industry, and that's about it.
I agree with you 100% there. Everybody always thinks it's price. It is not price. That's not why people bring heat treating in the house ever. You're right.
Right.
We are in complete agreement. You hit a nerve with me, as you can tell. It's not the price. But gentlemen, let's move on to what is.
I would just add one more thing that I was
certainly.
thinking about when they brought the heat treat in-house. If they've been outsourcing heat treat for all their life, and they're a medical device manufacturer that have plastic injection molds and rubber injection molds, and they bought the heat treat for these dies. Now they need a whole nother skill set in their plant to, take care of the vacuum furnace that was an outsourced item before. Yeah, that's all.
Gentlemen, let's move on to what is our third topic today, which is China. Everybody talks about China these days, good, bad, and different or whatever, but what China does affects the whole world these days. Carlos, let me ask you this question to begin with. As a furnace builder, do you compete with China? I guess that's as simple as you can make it. They make furnaces over there. They're super cheap. Do you compete with them, and is it a concern?
Well, if you want to compare dollar to dollar with China, that's not the right strategy. Everything is cheaper in China, but everything is more complex from China. That's what I tell my customers, right? So you can get a furnace for a very cheap price, but the level of complexity to put it on a boat, to do the paperwork, even the instruction manual. I actually got a customer not from China but from Korea that bought a Korean. They were a Korean bracing furnace, and they're calling me because they don't understand the instructions to light it up, right? And I tell the guys, well, go on Google and try to translate it, right? So that type of thing. So everything is cheaper, yes. Quality-wise, I don't know. But what I can tell you is more complex. Now, how do we battle competition from China? Well, always with a great customer service, which is, I believe, that's something I would like to add to last answer from Peter, right? Great customer service and showing the customers the professionalism and the skills of our team and our capabilities, right? It always comes, pricing always a very big driver of getting the order, but I believe it's only 50% of the game. So if you have great customer service, great capabilities, and you actually show professionalism, that's the way how you can battle China.
You know what? Next question is for Jim. Jim, you're in exactly the opposite boat. Yeah. So Carlos here is in North America, and he might or might not occasionally, obviously, compete with furnaces coming from China. You, on the other side of the coin, have a fairly large business selling your products into China. So in other words, you're competing with Chinese companies. What are the challenges you face there?
Well, price. So for sure, and that's the biggest challenge. But there's a couple things from a dynamic standpoint in that market. I talked about just before about what do we do from a training standpoint and having the right team in place on the ground. So you're the experts. That's what we've created. We've created an opportunity for people to reach out to us there to get the same level of service that you would out of the office here in Cincinnati. So that's a big part of it. You know, the market in China is different because there's all new equipment. So it's all new stuff that's getting made. There's that transition to like the retrofit market is not there yet. It's still new furnaces that are being made.
Good point.
Yeah. So, you know, for us, the sales process there is to, you know, OEMs or the established relationships that we would have with the existing companies that are doing business there. And it could be US manufacturers as well. So that trusted resource that they might get here in the States or from Mexico as an extension of the United States. Now they have that in China. And we manufacture everything here in the United States. So people rely on that engineering, the quality systems that you have in place when they're looking for parts and products, and they still get that in China because we manufacture it here and we sell it and support it out of our office in Shanghai.
Hey, Pete, sorry, Jim. That brings up a question. Are you able to get higher prices than your Chinese competition? Maybe that's an unfair question, but I've run across this before, specifically with AFC, actually. Customers in China were willing to pay a premium for their products because they perceived American made as being better quality than the local stuff. You see that?
Is this to me?
Well, actually, what I did was it's to both of you guys. You know, I meant to address it to Jim, but you know, both of you guys have answers to that, I'm sure.
My one question to Jim is how do you protect your product once it gets into China?
Well, you can't. So
here's my point on China. You know, part of this new North American trade agreement is because of, you know, people getting out of Asia. John Keogh's got a very good outtake and very good point of view on the Chinese market. And one of the things, Gord, maybe I can, and part of the premium for the AFC whole crop furnace, they want to buy that furnace one time. They're willing to pay a premium for it because once they get that furnace, they'll copy that furnace and they'll remake it again. Now, John Keogh has done a lot of work in China with applied process, knows the Chinese, you know, business mind, and he says, you know, to the Chinese businessman, that's not a bad thing to do. He's, you know, going to make a furnace he thinks is, you know, better than you can, and that's what they'll do. Part of the reasons that Timken and some of the other companies left Asia and went to Mexico was, you know, as the Timken's paying for a plant to be built on one side of the street, the same contractor is building the other plant on the other side of the street to duplicate the manufacturing process. The American Bearing Manufacturing Association that I'm a member of, one of the biggest things that they do is fight fraud, fight counterfeit bearings coming in from China. So they have to educate the people in the ports and how to identify, you know, counterfeit bearings so I think that is the major reason for the new North American trade agreement. People leaving China, the you know, all the money on the boat of the parts on the boat coming across the ocean with no just-in-time delivery capabilities stifled a lot of people. It was just not acceptable. So that's a little bit of the China intake that I have. I think you have to be aware of that, Jim. Are you guys aware of that, doing business in China, that your product could be duplicated or could be counterfeited?
You'd be kidding yourself if you thought that wouldn't be the case. If a big company, if all the big companies in the world have the problem, if we thought that somebody wasn't going to reverse engineer anything that we made, we'd be kidding ourselves. So
how do you try to combat it in China with your Chinese office, the relationship you have with people that are selling on the ground?
Yeah, it's exactly. But you know, I still kind of stand the ground of the quality of the manufactured parts that you're making are coming out of here. So even though if something does get reverse engineered, you know, you're still not going to have the same level of support. the same manufacturing processes in place, et cetera. So
It's a battle, and it's one that you have to fight. You have to be willing to, to sell into China. You have to be willing to accept that of the Chinese marketplace.
Mhm.
Is the same true in India per se as it would be in China?
no,
I've not heard that.
no.
So that's China kind of wrapped up in a little ball for me. And John Keogh's got excellent insight on doing business in China.
Well, John did a lot of business there, so he would know.
He's
So.
got excellent insight.
Gentlemen, let's move on to our final topic. How has COVID changed our industry? And Pete, you and I were talking about this before. We're both road warriors. We both, and Jimmy, you spend your life traveling, and Carlos, you do also. I guess one thing I wonder is with COVID, with everybody getting used to being in the office, is this all going to change? Is travel going to drop? Carlos, why don't I ask you first? What do you think? What do you think is going to change because of COVID?
Well, first of all, traveling, and also it has been very challenging to get in front of our customers because plants have a very strict policy about who is essential or visitor or supplier or not. So that's a challenge. I believe that's gonna be like the new normal from now on. But we have to think out of the box, Gord. So with these new technologies, we can be easily talking to everybody, our customers, like what we're doing right now. You're in Canada, Jim's in Cincinnati, Peter's in Michigan, I'm in Mexico. So I believe we have to look at it as a bright side. Many of the companies have saved a ton of money on travel expenses and entertainment, right? So I believe that's a good thing. Me having a baby right now, I can tell you that these travel restrictions have gotten me to spend a lot of time with my family. So my quality of life have actually increased. But, and that's why I started the podcast, just talking to everybody across the world, right? I do believe that aerospace is going to take at least a couple of years to get back, right? People like to travel, right? When you talk to a millennial and you say him what are his goals, he wants to travel around the world, right? You can't travel around the world by Uber. You need to grab a plane, right? So this is going to take some time. I feel as well that heavy automation is going to be in place. We talked about automation, but if you want to have less crowds there, robots don't get positive on COVID, right? So I believe that for the automotive market, I believe more cars will be sold because guys won't like to take like the Boss or something. And I'm talking about lighter cars. So I believe that's a trend. And construction, I believe is going to boom because people are going to have their own house with their own garden. They're going to try to avoid going on parks. That's what I think. It's hard to see. If we go 1 year back, everybody thought 2020 was going to be a disaster, which really wasn't that bad. The market is at its highest levels, and there's a big uncertainty about what's going to happen in 2021. That's my hope.
Hey, Jimmy, what do you think? What do you think as president of SSI? What do you think is going to change with COVID?
Well, I think COVID has accelerated some of the technology that's being used, like this, for example. So that, I think that the people will end up probably doing, instead of just picking up the phone, they might do more video conferencing in the future. And I think it's effective. It's an effective tool. I agree with Carlos. The aerospace industry is hurting really bad, and it's going to take a couple of years to get back. And it's hurting bad because of the business traveler. It's not. I think at least here in the U.S. and some parts of the country, I feel like people are using it for leisure. That might be kind of slowing down a little bit right now, just because of the high number of cases. But I see that happening, coming back quicker. As the vaccine comes more and more, into the population, you'll see more people traveling, but there's a high level of I guess conservatism with companies and businesses, and they've been able to save some money. They're looking at that and kind of weighing that. I think it'll come back. I do think there'll be face-to-face will be very close to what we have had in the past. Maybe not exactly the way it is. So I think one thing that people don't talk a lot about is from a COVID, what happened from a COVID standpoint is the broken supply chain. You know, you can look at facilities in China that shut down for a month, and you know what? That had a huge impact. Look at what's happening right now with Ford. Ford is stopping production on some cars, not because they can't get the parts, the major parts. It's because they can't get the electrical components coming out of Asia. So broken supply chain is huge.
I read that.
Yeah. So I think from a North America standpoint, I think there's probably some positive. I could see some reshoring, and I think that reshoring, when I talk about reshoring, I think that's Canada, the US, and Mexico, because
I agree.
if I need to go down to Heathrow to be in our office, I can get a flight later today and be down there tonight. Can't do that in China. Forget about the the restrictions on COVID. Because that eventually will go away. So I think the COVID piece, when it comes to specifically what's happened from the supply chain standpoint, it's really in the forefront of the thought process.
I agree, Jim. I think that goes right back to that, globalization turning into regionalization. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. Anybody want to make any predictions about where we're going to be in the heat treating industry in 5 years, 10 years from now? Anybody want to say that commercial heat treats are going to double the amount that they're doing at the expense of captives? Or does anybody want to make a real bold prediction about where we're going to be in a few years?
I guess to pick up on vertical integration as opposed to supply chain management, regionalization as opposed to globalization. And Carlos mentioned of all the majority of the stuff going down to Mexico right now is captive. They're building large plants with everything inside. And when the pandemic hits and throws away all your predictions of your sales numbers, and you're sitting on this massive amount of capital equipment and property, the supply chain management, even though it could be fractured at times, has to be more popular in the boardroom than making this decision to buy all this equipment and make all these capital investments and then be subject to a pandemic. So I think that's going to affect some boardroom decisions in our benefit, in the commercial heat treat benefit. I think people will be more reluctant to build those giga plants, if you will. And let the up and downs of the market fall on the commercial heat treating. The pandemic, like the only thing about the pandemic is after the 1918 Spanish pandemic, we had the Roaring 20s. Okay, the Roaring 20s in the United States, where everybody had parties and speakeasies and whatever because of all the lockdown from the Spanish pandemic in 1918, which killed a lot more people. The Dodge brothers fell victim to the pandemic, and some very prominent people. I believe that was a lot worse. And we're doing the same things that they did in 1918 today. So our medical our knowledge has really made some leaps and bounds forward because we're all wearing the same masks as they did in 1918. But we heat treat's here to stay. Is commercial heat treat going to take over from captive? I say yes, because that's what I hope to happen. But that's up to the boardrooms, and it goes from every 10 years. A new management style comes in where we want to manage the supply chain. We just want to engineer and sell the product. To know we want total vertical integration to control every aspect of the manufacturing process. So that changes up and down. And right now we're in the vertical integration part of it. So everybody wants to have stuff in-house.
Good points. Very good points. And I can see you're getting excited about the party starting when this is all over. I'm with you, Pete.
I've started a conga line before.
They go with on it.
Just would like to add to that, Gord. As we stated, heat treat is a strategic geographical business, right? You cannot heat treat stuff from very far away because of the inventory on transit. With this type of pandemics, the big companies with the big captive, big pushers, right? Didn't have enough volumes to process on a pusher, so they shut it down because they just kept consuming gas, right? So that is where it makes sense to have like a approved source by CQI9, right? If something goes out, or if you're just burning money, right? There's companies that only have pushers, and there's a lot of companies that they only have big IQs, right? I kind of like when it's in the middle, a couple of pusher and a couple of batches, so they can actually balance their lines. But I always tell my customers, you should have like a plan C. Right? You shut down your pushers, you shut down your batches, but you should be able to send production out, right? And nobody expected this, and this actually happens. And when the pandemic hit, a lot of companies had, the big corporations had, which were not essential, had to be shut down by law, right? But smaller businesses, heat treat businesses that, or heat treat has some medical, or heat treat has some constructions, some steel work, they were called as essential, but we kept heat treating stuff that was not essential because our operation was still open. So that was my experience. So I always tell the captives, if you want to have it in-house, that's fine. Just have a supplier ready to go.
Oh, good point. So, hey, Jimmy, you want to make any fearless predictions about where we're going to be in a few years?
Well, I think the electronic vehicle market in 10 years is definitely going to have an impact. But I'm dying to find out more about that. But I do think 10 years is a realistic timeline where you're going to see a significant impact on the amount of powertrain gears that will be heat treated. So 5 years, I think the administration that's in place now in the United States anyway will kind of help feed that. I think that $5 gallon of gas is
Coming soon.
driver.
Yeah,
So when we see that, that's actually going to really create take away all the headwind, and it's going to be full steam ahead. So, but 5 years from now, it's going to be making its way in there. There's a huge transition that has to take place, but
infrastructure transitions,
right.
Charging stations,
but
manufacturing changeovers. It's a large thing to take, and it's GM has said by 2030 they'll have 25 electric vehicles offered in their portfolio. They changed their whole corporate logo to look like a plug-in to push the electric market. So it's I think we do have to talk about this a little bit too, and maybe separate North America and Mexico a little bit. We've all traveled down there before. We all know that there's a little lag time between Mexico and where we're at in the United States. Last time I think Carlos said it's about 30 years, between the United States and Mexico as far as catching up. So that's going to be accelerated now because we're moving warp speed. So, we're going from to less vehicles, more people working remotely, less building of big cities, electric vehicles, change over infrastructure from gas stations to electric charging stations. It's mind-boggling. It's really mind-boggling, but it's going to go full steam ahead because our administration is that's what they're going. That's how we're going to save the world, by everybody driving electric vehicles using lithium and cobalt freaking batteries that don't last, and all the greenhouse gases created to make the cars, but they're electric vehicles, so we'll all be good. Not that you could use a hydrogen cell that would be good, or something that the free market could create, but the government has decided that electric vehicles will be our path forward. And in the United States, I think we have to separate United States and Canada probably too, Gord, to exclude you. our focus is going to be light years ahead. You know, we still need to put cars into, you know, every Mexican's hands, you know, Kias or Toyotas or Ford Fiestas, and we're on, you know, electric SUVs. And I don't know, you know, we passed over this massive public transportation thing because we've gravitated away from these huge city centers now to more, you know, rural environments. And
Yeah, you know,
who wants to go back to a city? But I think, but again, these are things that the pandemic and all the scare tactics, if you will, make you think. I think I kind of agree with Jim. The AVMA show is virtual in March. They've already made that decision. But all the publications from ASM of the show in September, it seems like it's still going to go on in St. Louis. That's all your indications still, Jim?
Yep. Yep.
So hopefully sooner than later, we will get to meet each other and we will be able to, I'm a hugger, you all know that, give each other a hug and say hello. And I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, there's going to be change. A lot of people aren't going to be comfortable doing that. You know, a lot of people are not going to be comfortable doing that. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to when that day comes. I think we will all get back to the normal that we were all used to. And I think, you know, if we all take this seriously, this medical problem that we're in, we'll get past it and wait for the next horrible thing to happen.
Well, gentlemen, I'm looking at the time here, and I honestly think that we could talk all afternoon very easily, and I actually would enjoy that. However, probably we should. Carlos, anything you'd like to add here?
No, thanks for having us here, Gord. Stay safe. As Peter said, you know, I hope we can actually meet again and, you know, have a beer together and just keep talking for hours. This industry, it's very passionate. It's always great to talk with guys that actually know their stuff, and just glad for this opportunity. Thanks, Gord.
Well, thank you. So, hey, Jimmy, thanks for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Gord. I certainly enjoyed it. Appreciate it.
Gordon, what can I say? Thanks for having me. Great to talk to you again. So we'll see each other around the corner, around the campus. I'm excited about the heat treat industry. I know that, you know, I love the industry that I'm in. I'm looking at 3 faces that are friends of mine. And I'm looking forward to the opportunities that we have to face to keep going forward. So let's go sell some heat treat.
Yep.
All right.
Sounds good.
And then
Thanks,
we can put your probes in. All right, Jim.